Joining me now, let's bring in right now the chairman and editor-in-chief of Forbes Media. Steve Forbes is here, and senior legal fellow and deputy director of the Heritage Foundation Center for Legal and Judicial Studies, Tom Jipping. Gentlemen, good afternoon to you.
Good to be with you.
Steve, let's talk about the politicization that started right off the bat. Dick Durbin from Illinois, the first thing he did was he started to say, you are President Trump's pick. You are the pick of Donald J. Trump. They're already politicizing Kavanaugh as the pick, Steve. And they're doing it without even getting to the nominee's opening statement. What do you make of that?
This reflects the almost demented base of the, be blunt about it, Cheryl, the far left of the Democratic Party. They're outraged at Trump being in the Oval Office. They want to do anything possible to stop this nominee. And the very fact that Kavanaugh is so qualified, they want to portray him as Genghis Khan in robes. The very fact that he's so qualified enrages them even more, because they don't have much to go against him. So on those documents, as you and others have pointed out, they've done no more than or less than what Barack Obama did with one of his Supreme Court nominees. So they're desperate to appease their angry base. So they have to show, it's all a show, that they're angry and they're going to do everything possible, and they'll make a mockery of it. But at the end of the day, Senator Orrin Hatch, who we just had that clip on, is right. They will confirm him, and they'll get Democrat votes as well.
You know, that balance of power, Steve, though, I'm glad you brought that up, because, Tom, to you on that, you know, right now the Senate is 50-49, but just in the last hour, breaking news out of Arizona, Governor Ducey now nominating John Kyle to take over Senator McCain's seat. So now we're at 51-49. That's the balance of power in the Senate. There are a couple of Republicans that we know are kind of on the fence here. One of them, of course, is Lisa Murkowski, as well as the other senator that are worried about it's the social issues with this nominee. Do the Democrats have anybody that you think would flip over to the other side?
No, I don't. In fact, the same kinds of arguments about Judge Kavanaugh's qualifications and his judicial philosophy will appeal to at least a few Democrats, as they will appeal to Senators Collins and Murkowski. I think with Steve, I think he will be confirmed, and with at least a few Democratic votes. I want to point out, though, that today, with the goings-on that you were describing, don't forget that every single Democrat on the Judiciary Committee announced their opposition to Kavanaugh weeks ago. So they can talk all they want about we need thousands of more documents before having a hearing. They didn't need those documents to decide to oppose him. They needed to know one piece of information, that Kavanaugh was nominated by President Trump. That is the only piece of information they needed in order to announce their opposition. So all of this stuff is coming from senators who are already planning to vote no.
Well, and look, the delay attempts that we saw, I mean, it was a very easy list to point out who was going to oppose him, and it's Schumer, and it's Cory Booker, who, of course, we know is mulling a 2020 run, Feinstein, Blumenthal, Steve. But at the same time, the hits that they're planning here, and you've already kind of got the playbook that you can see from the Democrats or what they're going to use against Kavanaugh. It's going to be things like, believe it or not, guns. They're going to go after him on abortion rulings. Truthfulness is another one. His views on executive power, Steve, which kind of points to the fact that if the president were to find himself in legal trouble, how would Kavanaugh actually view or vote on executive power, the abuse of? I mean, Steve, this is their playbook. Does it work?
Absolutely not. I don't think it's even going to work in the court of public opinion or even among moderate Democrats. The fact of the matter is, Kavanaugh has an extensive record there. He's made it very clear that he does not believe in upending precedents of the past. Modifications, yes, but upheavals, that's not his style. And so what they really are angry about, Cheryl, in addition to being appointed by President Trump, is that with him on the Supreme Court, with his great scholarly and persuasive powers, this is going to be the end, or the beginning of the end, of the Supreme Court acting like a national legislature. And if you want to make changes, fundamental changes in American fabric of life, you're going to have to do it the old-fashioned way, appeal to public opinion, legislatures, voters, and the like, rather than by judicial decree. The end of the administrative state is what I think the Democrats fear most of all.
We won't get, Tom, until tomorrow. We won't even get to the Q&A till tomorrow. In fact, we're still waiting just for the opening statement from Kavanaugh himself because of the fact that, well, these opening statements from all of these senators have gone on, and they're taking the floor. Not really a surprise, but the business side of Kavanaugh, I think, is going to be what's be fascinating for our viewers, in particular, how he has either dissented or voted in favor of different crucial business decisions, especially with employment law. There was a big SeaWorld case where a trainer died, and he was part of that decision. He actually went against SeaWorld in his dissent, Tom. He said, look, I don't want to see too much regulation over whether or not an entertainment industry employee should be taking or not taking a risk at their job. That's up to the individual. Now, that case still went against SeaWorld, but he seems to be in favor of less regulation when it comes to the workplace in general. Does that help or hurt him in these proceedings?
Well, I think we have to be careful to distinguish between two different kinds of judges. One is a judge who really focuses on who wins, who loses, which interests are served. That's what the left likes. The right way to look at judges is the process that they use to reach their results, and they use the same kind of process in all of their cases. That's what Judge Kavanaugh did in the SeaWorld case. Right. I think it helps business if their voice can be most effective in the political process. What Steve was just referring to is judges allowing the political process to make those kinds of decisions, and then everyone's going to be able to compete there, persuade people of their point of view. That's
why the Supreme Court, why this is so important. I mean, this is something that will affect generations to come. Steve, really quick last word to you. He's being described as a court tipper, and what I mean by that is, this is the second pick for President Trump. Gorsuch kind of evened out the court. He seems to be the one that could really tip the court in a more conservative way.
He'll tip it, but look at Justice Roberts, what he did on that Obamacare decision several years ago. He could become gradually more like Justice Kennedy, whom Kavanaugh is going to be replacing on the Supreme Court. So it's not going to be this rigid 5-4 thing that everyone thinks about. There's going to be still a lot of fluidity. It's when one of the liberal justices steps down someday and you have a Republican president, that's when you're going to make these hearings look like a kid's picnic.
Yeah, well, Kennedy's surprise announcement of retirement certainly has set this ball in motion this time. Steve, Tom, thank you very much to both of you. Appreciate it.